The door slammed behind me so hard, it shook the floor under my feet. I stood there in the rain, cold water sliding down my cheeks, mixing with the tears I didn't want anyone to see. My daughter, Patricia, had just kicked me out of her house. Her voice still echoed behind the door. "You think hitting us was love? You think that was discipline? You ruined my whole life." Then I heard the click. She locked the door. I reached out, hoping maybe, just maybe, she didn't mean it. But the knob didn't budge. I was locked out. Like garbage. 85 years old, and thrown out like I was nothing. In my hand was a small grocery bag. It held my inhaler, 2 old blouses, and a photo of Patricia when she was 5, before everything broke between us. I sat on the cold steps. I didn't shout. I didn't knock. I didn't beg. I just sat there in silence, with the rain soaking my sweater and my bones. Because deep down, I knew why this happened. For 50 years, I had told myself it was discipline. But Patricia? She called it abuse. And now, I was living with the consequences of what I had done. The thunder rumbled far off in the distance. My hands were shaking. My cane had slipped off the side of the porch, but I didn't move to get it. I just stared at the closed door, wondering if my own child would ever open it again. And then a question hit me so hard, I felt it in my chest. Where do you go, when the only people you ever loved turn their backs on you? Let me take you back to where it all began. The year was 1974. I was 35 years old, already a widow. My husband, Thomas, died in a car accident when Patricia was only 5. We lived in a small brown house on Maple Street in a quiet little town where kids played with sticks and old tires and neighbors borrowed sugar from each other. It smelled like cinnamon bread and pine sol. I kept that house clean and warm, even though I was running myself into the ground working 2 jobs. I was a lunch lady at the elementary school during the day. At night, I cleaned offices downtown just to put food on the table. I didn't sleep much. Didn't smile much either. But I loved my daughter. I loved her fiercely. She had fast legs, curious eyes, and a laugh that could make a statue smile. But she was wild sometimes, forgetting her homework, spilling milk, talking back like little girls sometimes do. And every time she did, I'd stop her with what I thought was love. A slap. A belt. A locked door. Just like my parents did to me. Better a bruise now than a broken life later, I used to whisper to myself. I truly believed it. I wasn't trying to be cruel. I was trying to make her strong. When she brought home AC in 3rd grade, I made her kneel on rice and read her books out loud until midnight. When she left her bike out in the yard, I hid it for a week and told her thieves must have taken it. When she spilled hot cocoa on the carpet, I made her scrub the whole living room on her knees while I watched. I thought I was teaching her. I thought it was right. But I never noticed what I was really doing. I never saw how her light was going out. Her hugs became stiff. Her smiles became forced. She never cried, even when I yelled. She just learned to go quiet. And for a long time, I told myself that was proof it was working. She's respectful, I'd tell the other moms. She don't give me no trouble. But she also never asked me for help. Never laid her head in my lap. Never said, I love you unless I said it first. Still, life went on. She grew up, top of her class. Got into college. Moved far away. I thought she'd come back for the holidays, but she didn't. I mailed her birthday cards. Called her once a month. She rarely answered. Then one day, out of nowhere, she called me. Her husband had lost his job. She was struggling. And she needed someone to help watch her daughter. My granddaughter, Leah. So I packed my things and moved in. I thought maybe this was a second chance. But it wasn't. It was awkward. She didn't trust me. She set rules. Told me how to speak to Leah. How not to yell. How to be gentle. Gentle? That word never made sense to me. Until one rainy Tuesday afternoon. Leah, only 10 years old, knocked over a glass vase in the hallway. It shattered. Just like that. And before I could stop my hand, I slapped her. Across the face. The same way I used to do with Patricia. The sound of it was like a thunderclap in the room. Leah's eyes filled with tears. She didn't scream. She just whispered, "Why'd you hit me?" And behind me, I heard Patricia's voice. Rage. Fire. Pain. What the hell is wrong with you? She's not me. You don't get to do this again. I tried to speak. Tried to explain. But nothing came out. That night, she told me I had to leave. That she couldn't have me around Leah anymore. I didn't believe her. Thought she was just mad. But this morning, she meant it. She threw my clothes in a bag. She pushed me toward the door. She called me a monster. And then, the door slammed. And the lock clicked. And I was outside. Alone. Wet. Old. Unwanted. I sat there on the porch, feeling the rain soak through my sweater. Thinking maybe this was what I deserved. Thinking maybe I had spent a lifetime calling something discipline. When really, it was just pain dressed in different clothes. Maybe I didn't protect Patricia. Maybe I broke her. I pulled the photo out of my plastic bag, Patricia at 5 years old, holding a balloon, looking up at me like I was her whole world. Now I wasn't even welcome in her home. I whispered into the rain, "I didn't know, baby. I didn't know." And just as I went to pick up my cane, I heard a soft voice behind me. "Grandma?" I turned my head, heart skipping. It was Leah, barefoot on the porch, holding something in her hand. My voice cracked as I asked, "What are you doing out here?" She stepped closer. And in her small hand was a police badge. My blood went cold. Was she calling someone? Had Patricia reported me? Was this the end? Or was it something else entirely? I didn't know. But I could feel it deep in my bones. Something big was about to happen. I stared at the badge in Leah's hand. It looked real. Heavy. Cold. Shiny under the porch light. Her fingers were small, but steady. Her eyes locked onto mine like she was trying to read my whole heart through my wrinkled face. Where did you get that?" I asked, my voice barely coming out. She didn't blink. "Mom's friend left it here. He's a police officer. I heard them talking last night," she said. "They're going to make sure you don't come back." I froze. Not come back? Was I some kind of criminal now? "I didn't mean to hurt you," I said softly. Leah nodded, but her face was sad. "I know," she whispered. "But you did. That broke me more than the slap ever could." I wanted to reach for her, but my arms felt too heavy. She stepped closer and placed the badge in my lap like she was handing me my sentence. "I thought maybe you'd want to know," she said. And then, just like that, she turned around and went back inside. The door closed quietly behind her this time. No slam. No lock click. Just silence. And me, sitting there with the weight of 5 decades pressing down on my shoulders. I walked to the edge of the street with my cane, no coat, soaked to the bone. Every step hurt. My hip was throbbing. My knees felt like they'd snap in half. I didn't even know where I was going. I just knew I couldn't stay. Nobody on the street stopped to help. Nobody even looked twice. An old lady walking in the rain isn't news in this town. Not when she's nobody. I ended up at the bus stop by the gas station. Sat down on the metal bench, shivering. My bag was leaking now, the photo of Patricia damp and curling at the corners. I held it to my chest. Closed my eyes. And for the first time in years, I remembered the beginning. I was 7 when my father first hit me with the belt. I'd left the gate open and the chickens had run out. He said I was careless. Said it was for my own good. Mama didn't stop him. She just sat in the kitchen, peeling potatoes like nothing was happening. That was the way things were in our house. No hugs. No praise. Just rules. You follow them, you live quietly. You break them, you bleed a little. I didn't even think it was wrong until I met Thomas. He was kind. He held my hand without asking for anything. He laughed at my jokes and said my eyes reminded him of sunlight through trees. He showed me softness. But he died just 3 years into our marriage. A truck hit him on the interstate during a rainstorm. I was 29. Patricia was still in diapers. After that, I went cold. I couldn't afford to cry. I couldn't afford to be soft. I had a baby to raise. So I picked up the tools I had. Discipline. Rules. Hard work. Control. But I forgot that children don't grow right when they're raised in fear. They grow with cracks inside them. Cracks I didn't see until it was too late. A bus finally pulled up. I didn't have a plan, but I had a little money in my purse. Just enough to get to the other side of town. To Danika's house. Danika was the only friend I had left. We used to work together in the school cafeteria. She'd retired 5 years ago, but we still called each other every now and then. When the driver asked, "Where to?" I just said, "Anywhere dry." He laughed, and I gave him my last few dollars. The ride was short. I watched the city blur by through the fogged-up windows. People living their lives. Lights and windows. Warmth I couldn't touch. When the bus stopped near Danika's street, I hobbled down the sidewalk with my cane slipping in puddles. I knocked on her door, soaking wet and breathless. She opened it wearing a pink housecoat and curlers. Her eyes widened. "Lord, Maggie, what happened?" I broke down. Right there on her porch, I collapsed to my knees and cried so hard I shook. She didn't ask questions. She pulled me inside and wrapped me in towels. Fed me soup. Sat beside me on the couch while I shook. And when I could finally talk, I told her everything. Patricia. Leah. The slap. The badge. All of it. Danika didn't yell. She didn't say, "I told you so." She just looked at me with tired, honest eyes. "Maggie, you taught her to survive," she said. "But you forgot to teach her how to feel safe with you." That sentence hit like a punch. Because it was true. I raised Patricia to be strong, but I never made her feel loved without fear. "Do you think she'll ever forgive me?" I asked. Danika sighed. "She might. But first, you have to forgive yourself." That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay awake in Danika's guest room, staring at the ceiling fan spinning in slow circles. I kept thinking about Patricia's eyes when she screamed at me. The pain in Leah's voice. The silence between us. I wanted to fix it. But how do you heal wounds you can't even see? How do you make up for decades of quiet damage? I didn't have answers. Only guilt. And one decision. I would try. No matter what it took. I would try. The next morning, I borrowed Danika's phone and called Patricia. Straight to voicemail. I left a message. "It's Mom. I'm sorry. Not just for yesterday. For everything. I know you're hurt. I know I don't deserve forgiveness. But I want to change. I want to be better. Please don't shut me out forever." I hung up, heart pounding. I didn't expect a reply. But later that afternoon, Danika brought me a small envelope from the mailbox. No return address. No name. Just my name, scribbled on the front, Mom. Inside was a single piece of notebook paper. And in Patricia's handwriting were just 5 words. We'll talk. But not yet. I read it again. And again. And again. 5 words. But enough to make hope flicker in my chest. It wasn't forgiveness. Not yet. But it wasn't the end either. I pressed the paper to my lips and closed my eyes. And just as I started to smile for the first time in weeks, Danica rushed into the room, her face pale. "Maggie," she said breathlessly, holding her phone. "You need to see this." She turned the screen to me. And there it was. A photo. Of me. On someone's Facebook. Wet. On Patricia's porch. Bag in my lap. Leah in the doorway. The caption read, "She abused her kids for years. Now she wants sympathy?" The post had over 1,000 shares. And hundreds of comments. Most of them cruel. Judging me. Condemning me. Margaret Harper. 85 years old. Now the center of a social media storm. My knees buckled. The room spun. Because I realized. This wasn't just between me and my daughter anymore. The whole world had seen what I did. And they weren't going to forget. I held Danica's phone like it was burning my hands. My picture stared back at me. Rain dripping from my hair. My eyes wide and lost. My bag in my lap like I was some homeless old woman. But it wasn't the photo that broke me. It was the comments. Good for the daughter. Should have left her years ago. People like this ruin generations. No sympathy. Abusers always cry when the tables turn. Some called me a monster. Some said they wished their own mothers had been kicked out like me. A few, just a few, asked for the full story. But most, they judged me in one glance. A photo. A caption. That's all it took. Tears ran down my face, hot and fast. Danica reached for the phone, gently pulling it from my hands. She locked the screen and placed it face down on the table. "Maggie," she said softly, "don't read the comments. They don't know you." "But maybe they do," I whispered. "Maybe they see what Patricia saw. Maybe that's who I am." Danica shook her head. "No. You're a woman who made mistakes. But you loved her. You just didn't know how to show it right." My voice trembled. "Then why does everyone hate me?" "Because it's easier to point fingers than to understand pain." I looked down at my hands. Wrinkled, spotted. These were the same hands that rocked my baby to sleep. The same hands that cooked her meals, washed her clothes, and yes, sometimes raised in anger. What had I become? Who had I really been all those years? The next few days at Danica's were quiet. I stayed inside mostly. Afraid someone on the street might recognize me. I didn't call Patricia again. I didn't hear from Leah. And even though I tried to hold on to that one hopeful note, "We'll talk." But not yet. I felt like the time for talking might never come. On the third night, while Danica slept, I crept into the kitchen and sat at the table with a notebook and pen. I hadn't written anything in years. But something inside me told me I had to. I started with a letter. To Patricia. My dearest daughter. I don't know if you'll ever read this. But I need to say it, even if it's just to myself. I was raised by fear. And I passed that fear on to you. I thought I was protecting you. I thought that pain was the price of strength. But now I see the truth. You were never weak. I was. I was afraid of the world, and so I tried to control you. I was afraid of being alone, and so I pushed you into obedience. I was afraid of being soft, because I thought soft meant broken. But love, real love, is soft. I know I can't undo the past. But if you ever open the door again, I promise I will never use anything but kindness to step inside. I love you. I always did. I just didn't know how to show it. Mom. When I finished, I folded the paper neatly and sealed it in an envelope. Then I stared at it. 4 hours. Should I mail it? Would she tear it up? Would it even matter? That morning, I asked Danica to drive me to Patricia's house. She hesitated. Are you sure? She asked. I don't want to fight, I said. I just want to leave this. Quietly. We didn't talk on the drive over. My heart pounded like a drum in my chest. When we got to the house, I asked Danica to wait in the car. I walked up to the door. My legs were shaking. The porch still had that little crack by the step I used to trip over as a younger woman. I slipped the envelope under the door and turned to leave. But just as I stepped off the porch, the door opened. Patricia stood there in a bathrobe, eyes tired, face pale. She looked down at the envelope. Then up at me. Neither of us spoke. The silence between us was heavier than 1,000 words. Finally, she picked up the envelope. Her hand trembled. I haven't opened it, she said. I just wanted you to have it, I whispered. Her lips pressed into a thin line. Then she nodded. Once. And closed the door, softly this time. No slam. No lock. Just quiet. It wasn't forgiveness. But it wasn't hate, either. Back in Danica's car, I cried again. But this time, it was different. There was sorrow, yes. But also something else. Release. I had said what needed to be said. Whether she forgave me or not. I had finally spoken from my heart. Danica drove us to a small diner on the edge of town. We ordered coffee and toast. And just as I was sipping my second cup, her phone buzzed. She looked at it, then turned to me slowly. It's the local news, she said. They're asking for an interview. About the viral photo. They want to hear your side. My stomach dropped. Why would they care? Because the internet turned you into a villain, she said gently. But maybe, just maybe, it's time the world heard the truth. I stared out the window at the rainy street. Dozens of thoughts raced through my head. What if people didn't believe me? What if they mocked me? But then I remembered Leah's eyes. And the chance to speak. Not just for myself, but for every mother who had made mistakes and wanted to do better. I looked at Danica and nodded. Call them, I said. I'll tell them everything. The news crew came the next afternoon. They set up lights in Danica's living room. Put a microphone on my shirt. Powdered my face. And then the camera rolled. I told my story. From my childhood. To Thomas's death. To the way I raised Patricia. The things I thought were right. And the things I now knew were so very wrong. I cried. I shook. But I didn't hold anything back. When the interview aired 2 nights later, I didn't watch it. But the next morning, my phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number. It said, I saw the interview. I cried. Thank you for saying what my mother never could. A stranger, but not alone. Dozens more followed. People who had lived through the same pain. Some who had given it. All of them, healing together. That night, I sat by the window with a cup of tea. Danica had gone to bed. And just when I thought the day was over, my phone buzzed again. This time, it was a video message. From Patricia. I pressed play with trembling hands. Her face appeared on the screen. Soft. Sad. Strong. Mom, she said, I watched it. Every second. And I cried, too. I'm not ready for everything. But I'm ready for something. Leah wants to see you. She wants to know who her grandma really is. If you're ready to show her, we'll be waiting tomorrow. 4 p.m. Our porch. I covered my mouth as I sobbed. The porch. The same place I had been thrown out like trash. Now, it was a door waiting to be opened again. But this time, not with anger. With healing. With love. But just as I was about to call Danica to tell her the good news, the TV in the corner lit up with breaking news. The same officer who had been Patricia's friend, the one whose badge Leah had shown me, had just been arrested for covering up child abuse complaints from multiple families. I stared at the screen, my blood running cold. Because I realized this man had been a protector to Patricia, and maybe even the reason she felt safe turning against me. But now, everything had changed again. And I didn't know if tomorrow's meeting on the porch would bring peace. Or something far more dangerous. I couldn't sleep that night. The news of Officer Halford's arrest played in a loop inside my head. I sat frozen on the edge of the bed, watching his face on the screen as anchors recited the charges: evidence tampering, false reports, intimidation. Words that sounded like they belonged in crime shows, not the life of a woman who just wanted to see her granddaughter. I clutched the phone to my chest, Patricia's message still fresh in my mind. Leah wants to see you. If you're ready to show her, we'll be waiting tomorrow. 4 p.m. Our porch. I was ready. Or I thought I was. But now? Now I wasn't sure what kind of danger I was walking back into. Danica came into the room with a fresh blanket and sat beside me. I saw the news, she said gently. I nodded. He was in their house. Around Leah. Around Patricia. Danica's eyes narrowed. Do you think he had something to do with all this? The photo? The threats? The way she turned so fast? I swallowed hard. I don't know, I whispered. But I need to find out. For Leah. Danica didn't try to stop me. She knew when a woman had made up her mind. You want me to come with you tomorrow? She asked. No, I said quietly. I need to face them alone. The next day, I dressed in my best blouse. Light blue. The one Thomas once said brought out my eyes. I brushed my thinning hair and pinned it neatly at the back. Put on the locket with his photo inside. And tucked Patricia's letter in my purse, just in case I forgot what hope looked like. At 3:45, I stood outside their house again. This time I wasn't shivering. I wasn't crying. I was steady. At 3:59, I took one step onto the porch. The door opened before I could knock. Patricia stood there. And Leah peeked from behind her, holding a pink stuffed bear I hadn't seen in years. My heart clenched. They didn't say anything. So I said the only words I could think of. May I come in? Patricia nodded slowly. Leah's eyes widened. Grandma? My knees nearly gave out. I knelt, slowly, painfully, and opened my arms. She ran to me. No hesitation. No fear. Just pure, childlike love. I held her so tightly, I thought I might shatter from joy. And that's when Patricia finally spoke. Let's sit down, she said. We need to talk. The three of us sat in the living room. The same room where I'd once scolded Patricia for spilling juice on the carpet. The same room where Leah probably learned to tiptoe around her mother's moods, the way Patricia once tiptoed around mine. Everything felt heavier now. But quieter, too. I watched the interview, Patricia began. And I read your letter. I nodded. She took a deep breath. I was angry. For a long time. And when Officer Halford started checking on us, I felt protected. Safe. Like someone was finally on my side. I said nothing. I told him about some of the things you used to say. How strict you were. The slaps. The punishments. I didn't lie. But I didn't tell the whole truth either. She looked up at me, tears in her eyes. I didn't tell him how you sat beside me every night when I had nightmares. How you never missed a school play. How you gave me your last $20 when I couldn't make rent. My lip trembled. I guess I wanted to make sense of my pain, she continued. And he made it easy. Easy to be angry. Easy to blame you for everything. Leah climbed onto my lap quietly, her tiny fingers wrapping around mine. And now? I asked, voice cracking. Patricia's hands trembled. Now I'm scared, she whispered. Because the man I trusted turned out to be a monster. And I let him into my home. Around my daughter. I reached across the table and took her hand. You were trying to protect her, I said. Just like I tried to protect you. We just didn't know how. She nodded. Slowly. Tearfully. I'm sorry, Mama. Those words. Those 3 words. 50 years of silence broke open with them. And then. Boom. A loud crash shattered the moment. Glass from the front window exploded inward. We screamed. Leah screamed. I threw myself over her instinctively. Patricia pulled her under the table. I looked up. A brick. A brick had been thrown through the window. Attached to it was a note, taped to the side. Danika's warning echoed in my mind, the internet turned you into a villain. I crawled over and picked it up. Written in black marker, scrawled in shaky, furious handwriting were the words. Child abusers don't get second chances. My hands went ice cold. I looked at Patricia. Her eyes wide with terror. She whispered, he told people. Who? I asked. Halford. Before his arrest. He leaked your name. Said you were dangerous. Suddenly, I understood. This wasn't just a family matter anymore. This was a public war. A witch hunt. And we were the target. The police came 20 minutes later. Took the note. Took photos. Asked questions. But they couldn't guarantee anything. Couldn't protect us. Not from the internet. Not from a town that had already made up its mind. After they left, Patricia paced the living room. What do we do now? She asked. I looked at Leah. Then at her mother. Then at the shattered window. And I knew the answer. We take back the truth, I said. Loudly. The next morning, I called the same news station that had interviewed me. Told them I wanted a follow-up. This time, with Patricia beside me. And Leah, if she felt safe. They agreed. That interview aired a week later. We sat on the couch together, shoulder to shoulder. And told the whole story. From beginning to end. Our family's wounds. Our healing. Our regrets. Our strength. We cried on camera. We laughed a little too. Leah sat between us, holding our hands. And when the reporter asked if we forgave each other, Patricia looked at me and said, We're learning to love better. That's more important than forgiveness. I squeezed her hand. Because that's all I ever wanted. To be loved better. And to love better in return. But just when we thought it was over. When the world started sending messages of support instead of hate. A letter arrived in our mailbox. No stamp. No return address. Just a single page. Inside was a photo. Of Leah. Taken from across the street. At school. The note underneath said. She's not safe as long as you are around. Patricia's hands trembled as she read it. I felt the blood drain from my face. Because whoever sent that letter was watching. Waiting. And willing to hurt a child just to punish an old woman for her past. This wasn't just about redemption anymore. This was about survival. And I would fight. Not just for forgiveness. But for the safety of my family. That night, I didn't sleep. I sat in the armchair by the window, watching shadows move outside Patricia's house. Every rustle of the trees, every flicker of a streetlight sent my heart pounding. I clutched Leah's photo in one hand, the threatening note in the other. I wasn't scared for myself. I was scared for her. This wasn't just about healing anymore. Someone out there wanted to drag us back into darkness. Someone believed I hadn't suffered enough. That my granddaughter, this innocent child, should pay the price for my sins. But they didn't know me. They didn't know what I had survived. And they certainly didn't know what I was capable of when it came to protecting my family. The next morning, I met with a private investigator. Danica had referred him, an old friend of her father's, retired NYPD. His name was Morris Weller. Bald, stern, and built like a mountain. He didn't smile much, but his eyes were kind. I handed him the photo and the note. He studied them silently. This was taken from a long lens. Maybe from a car. Professional camera, he muttered. I nodded. I want to know who did this. He tapped the photo twice. You will. Within 48 hours, he had footage from a store across Leah's school. A black SUV had parked in the same spot every day that week. Tinted windows. No plates. He cross-checked it with the school's security logs and found nothing. But what he did find was worse. A partial match to a man who'd once worked with Officer Halford. A disgraced ex-cop fired years ago for harassment. No charges stuck. But a reputation that followed him like smoke. His name was Clint Rourke. And according to Morris, he'd been obsessed with restoring justice since the day he was let go. A man like that doesn't forget a case. Or a woman the internet once called America's worst mother. I felt the rage rise up inside me again. He wasn't after the truth. He wanted a villain. And he wanted someone to hurt. That weekend, I met with Patricia and Danica in the kitchen. I placed the photo and Clint's name on the table. This isn't over, I said. But we can't stay quiet anymore. Patricia looked at me, worry etched deep into her face. You think he'll come after Leah? I know he will, I said. Unless we stop him. Danica leaned forward. What's your plan? I looked them both in the eye. And for the first time in 50 years, I spoke with power, not fear. We set the trap. I asked Morris to leak a fake story to one of his old media contacts. A tip that I was moving into a retirement home across town, alone, unguarded, isolated. It aired on local news 2 days later. Morris and his team planted hidden cameras and set up a decoy vehicle in the parking lot. That night, I sat in the borrowed retirement suite, lights low, heart steady. I wasn't bait. I was the storm. And sure enough, at 2:17 a.m., a black SUV pulled in. The figure that stepped out was tall, wearing a hoodie. He looked around, crept to the building door, and pulled out what looked like a crowbar. But before he could even lift it, flashlights, sirens, and 6 former officers tackled him to the ground. Morris himself pulled off the man's hood. It was Clint Rourke. And in his pocket? More photos of Leah. A knife. And a crumpled note that read, "Silence her. Make the pain stop." I was shaking when they cuffed him. But not from fear. From fury. How many other children had he stalked? How many other families had he tried to destroy? As they dragged him into the police cruiser, he looked at me and smirked. You don't deserve forgiveness, he spat. I stepped forward, steady as stone. I'm not asking for forgiveness, I said. I'm demanding peace. And with that, I turned away. For the first time in my life, I felt whole. In the weeks that followed, life slowly began to rebuild itself. The media picked up the story again, only this time they got it right. Grandmother who was shamed online saves granddaughter from violent ex-cop. I became something I never expected. A symbol of survival. Patricia and I began therapy, together. We didn't pretend things were perfect. They weren't. We had pain that needed time. But we were talking. We were healing. And most of all, we were choosing love. Leah began spending weekends with me. We baked cookies, watched cartoons, and planted a little garden in Danika's backyard. She once asked me, "Grandma, why did you cry when I hugged you?" I held her close and whispered, "Because I've been waiting my whole life for that hug." She smiled and said, "You can have as many as you want." Now, as I sit on this porch watching the sun melt into the trees, I feel something I haven't felt in 5 decades. Hope. The road to this peace wasn't easy. There were mistakes, regrets, and heartbreak I wouldn't wish on anyone. But through it all, I never gave up. Because sometimes, love isn't soft. Sometimes, love is fighting. Fighting to be better. Fighting to protect. Fighting to forgive. They called it discipline. But I know better now. It was fear. It was pain. And yes, it was abuse. But that silence? That long, bitter silence? It's over. This is my voice. This is my healing. And if you've ever felt like your pain didn't matter, let me say this. You're not alone. And it's never too late to change the story. Not even at 84. Not even after 50 years. Not even when they throw you away like trash. Because when you come back with love, you come back stronger.